Here's a terrifying question for you. Can you name 5 TikToks or Instagram Reels you watched yesterday? No? How about 3? Still nothing? But I bet you can name the last few movies you watched, right? That's because your brain literally cannot process short form content. And by the end of this video, I'll explain to you why you won't want to watch short form content again after this. Look, we all know, brain rot sounds like a funny Gen Z term, something designed to be a bit dramatic, like we're overreacting about the state of our collective consciousness. You already know scrolling isn't good for you, right? It's like picking up a cigarette. You know it's bad. Or sitting down for a 10-hour gaming session. Or eating a whole bag of candy. Obviously not great. But here's the difference between those addictions and scrolling. Most destructive behavior manifests physically in ways you can see and feel. If you're addicted to drugs, you lose weight and get sick, develop visible symptoms. If you're addicted to smoking, your lungs get clogged up, you get out of breath, can't exercise. Addicted to alcohol, hangovers, fatigue, liver problems, sugar addiction, energy spikes and crashes. Gambling, watch your bank account disappear. But short form content, it's a silent killer. It rots your brain away without you even realizing it's happening. There's no physical symptom, no immediate pain, no visible consequence. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Let me be clear about what I mean when I say your brain rots away. I'm not being metaphorical here. When you're watching short form content consistently, your neural pathways literally begin to decay. I'm going to explain how this happens from a neuroscientific perspective. Here's something you need to understand. You've one brain, just one. And until Elon Musk figures out how to give us neural implants or whatever, that's all you got. Your primary job in life should be protecting two things: your brain and your body, because you only get one of each, right? So pretty much just staying alive. Your body, sure, you probably try to protect it by eating healthy, exercising, but your brain, this is the most important thing you have. It's the mechanism you use to communicate, process emotions, and literally create your reality. Think about it. Your entire life, everything you experience is all happening through your brain. Things don't just happen, your brain perceives and creates them. This is what we call reality. So what does this have to do with short form content? Everything. When you scroll through these apps mindlessly, and that's the key word, mindlessly, you disengage your neural circuitry. In plain English, you're just not really using your brain. Don't believe me? Let's do the test I mentioned at the beginning. Name 5 Instagram Reels you watched from your last Doomscroll session. How about 5 shorts or TikToks? Can you name 3? How about just one that really stuck with you? You can't, can you? But if I asked you to name 3 movies you watched in the last month, or 3 TV series, 3 long-form YouTube videos, 3 podcasts, no problem, you'd recall them pretty quickly, right? So here's why. Short-form content is on average about 10 seconds long. That's not enough time for your brain to engage with the stimuli, process it, and store it in your memory before you already move on to the next video. Your brain literally cannot keep up. What this means is when you're scrolling through short-form content, you're scrolling through the void. When you have a doom-scrolling session, it's almost as it's never happened. On a neurochemical level, on a neuroscientific level, your brain has been disengaged. You're basically unconscious. It's like being asleep. The stimuli, these 10-second videos, aren't long enough for your brain to actually engage, process the information, and store it. And that's just something to think about, right? But because you scroll, you're not just losing time, you're losing 2 things. First, you're losing your life. Literally, what else could you be using your time for to actually build something meaningful that you're trying to achieve? Second, and this is the scary part, your brain literally decays. So let me finally get to how this works here. Your brain and the human body operate on a principle: use it or lose it. You probably heard of this before, but let me show you what this really means. The phenomenon is called senescence. It's what happens as people's brains age. Organs degrade, the brain slowly goes down, and the body ages. Normal stuff. But here's the interesting part. One of the main things that accelerates this is the lack of use. There has been massive studies done on nuns, and these groups of nuns from churches around the world, they found that the nuns who kept their brains engaged, playing board games, having conversations, maintaining their social lives, their brains decayed at a much slower rate than those who just sat around and watched TV all day. Not even considering the current state of social media and how things have changed so much since then. Why? Because if you don't use it, you lose it. And here's the problem. With short form content, when you're scrolling, you're not using your brain. The videos are too short, and your neural capacity to latch onto them, process them, and file them away, you're not using your brain, which means you're losing it. Now, I'm not saying your brain is literally shrinking like a raisin, but there is actual physical loss happening. The brain is a collection of billions and billions of neural pathways. You get these cells called neurons, and between them are connections. When you think, recall memory, have a conversation, watch a video, take notes, anything, these are just electricity pulsing through these pathways. But when you watch short form content, there are fewer electrical pulses happening. So sure, your brain's still doing the basic stuff, like regulating breathing, temperature, keeping you alive, but you're not consciously using it for these things. So here's a simplified version of how it works. When you do something, the neural pathway thickens. When you don't do it, it thins. Every time you engage in a behavior, these neurons fire, everything gets reinforced and are more likely to fire again. This is why habits that you've had for 10 to 20 years are so hard to break, because those neural pathways are thick, established like highways in your brain. So when you watch short form content, you're thickening these neurons from watching short form content. But in the process, everything else in your brain just stops. The pathways from deep thinking, emotional processing, creativity, problem solving, they're all thinning while you just scroll. Here's the terrifying statistic I found. The average Gen Z or millennial person spends about 3 to 4 hours per day on short form content. 3 to 4 hours every single day. Let's do the math. You're awake for 16 hours a day. You spend 4 hours on short form content. That's 25% of your conscious life, a quarter of your existence. If you were to live to 100, you might as well just subtract 25 years because, well, that's what you're giving up. There is no bigger time sink. You're not living, you're not building relationships, you're not making progress towards any goal, financial, health, or otherwise. You're not learning anything new that you're likely to remember. And you're probably not even having that good of an experience from it because you're not even conscious. How many times do you go away from a scrolling session and just feel empty? Just feel like, what did I just do with the past hour of my life? Don't get me wrong, I've been there. We all succumb to the brain rot every now and then, but it's just important to keep this in mind because it's not actually beneficial for what you're trying to achieve. Think about it. Have you ever sat with someone who's paralyzed from the waist down and they can't use their legs, so they stop walking? And what happens is their legs get skinny, they atrophy because they're not being used. So this is the equivalent to your brain. When you're watching short form content, your brain is getting visibly smaller. You become more stupid, less articulate, less experienced, less emotionally available when you spend literally a quarter of your life on these platforms. And I'm not telling you what to do here, I'm just giving you a different perspective. But just keep in mind, you're literally giving up your life and sacrificing your mental capacity for what? 10 seconds of dopamine? A hit that you're probably not going to remember? And here's the thing. It gets even worse. When you combine this with AI and large language models, we're looking at an even bigger problem. Short-form content consumption is rising, but so is the use of AI. AI gives you incredible efficiency, and lots of people are just completely outsourcing their thinking to platforms like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, etc. Grok. This is the acceleration of brain rot. If you don't use it, you lose it. When you outsource all your thinking to the AI, you're going to lose your ability to think critically, or at least not be as good as it if you're taking more reps and just doing it more for yourself, obviously. Processing all these emotions and viral clips without actually engaging, you'll lose your ability to properly process emotions and think deeply. If you look at the wealthiest people, the highest performing people in whatever industry or niche you pick, most of them are going to have one thing in common. And unless your job is actively social media, like an influencer, for instance, none of them, and I mean like 99%, don't touch short form content. They don't want to go near it. They create it, but they don't actively use it. And this is something I've just noticed. You got to watch what people are doing, not what they're saying. How many of the influencers that you see on social media or business people online on TikTok and Instagram, how many of them do you think are actively using it versus just posting it for you to spend your time aimlessly consuming? Why? Because high-performing people who do really well in life, they value their mental space. They value their mental capacity, and they would never want to sell part of their brain for short-term instant gratification. But that's exactly what a lot of you are doing. You're selling your life for empty pleasure. You're trading your neural pathways for dopamine hits you won't even remember. Does that sound like a good deal to you? So here's my challenge to you. Stop it. Even for 1 week, just delete the apps, set screen time limits, whatever it takes. Because every second you're scrolling is a second your brain is decaying, your life is wasting, and your potential is dying. And after 1 week of just not using any of them, see how you feel. Boredom does not really exist in our society anymore. Can you think of the last time you were bored? Probably not, because you can just go to your phone and entertain yourself whenever. But maybe in being bored, you're actually able to think of some of the bigger questions, solve those for yourself, and figure out what you want to do. Your brain is your most valuable thing you have. Stop letting it rot, stop scrolling, start living. Peace.